Michael Graham is the creative director at the Weekly Standard and good enough to join me now from Washington. Michael, it's great to see you again. I do want to point out former Obama senior advisor, in fact, David Axelrod, sent a tweet this morning calling this a good early win for Donald Trump, while some, such as Senator Sanders, as you just heard, are criticizing the precedent it might set. What do you make of it all?
Well, I agree with David Axelrod, and this is why people went out to vote for Donald Trump. And however small some folks in the media want to make this look, pointing out that this is only 1,000 jobs in a state that has about 500,000 manufacturing jobs right now, and how big is it really to the economy? This is a symbol to the millions of people who turned out for Donald Trump for something different to happen, that, hey, it looks like something different is going to happen. I just can't tell you, having run campaigns in the past, how powerful a small, understandable, I get it example like this is. I also want to suggest to my fellow friends in the media who are not Trump fans, and I was certainly not a Trump fan, that trashing this deal, it's easy to talk about the macroeconomic impact, but I guarantee you that every blue-collar worker across the country who works in a factory, manufacturing, whatever, who sees a news story dismissing the kind of job that they have as well, so what if they lose 1,000 jobs? No big deal. They just want to throw, they want to throw that newspaper right under the birdcage.
Focusing then on the job saved is by any measure. Again, to your point, 1,000 jobs have been saved. I wonder, though, and you mentioned it looks like. I mean, that suggests the optics here. Donald Trump is nothing if not somebody with would seem a sense of theater. But are those two ideas mutually exclusive? Can't this be, frankly, a good win optically and a dangerous precedent?
Absolutely. And, we know so little about the deal. There's some talk that there may have been state tax cuts maybe played a bigger role than federal. Obviously, Governor Mike Pence, now Vice President-elect Mike Pence of Indiana, there to be part of the deal. But I also want to say that one of the concerns that people had about Trump's talk about trade was that it was all stick and no carrot. It was, if you leave the country, carrier, and you try to ship your furnaces or ACs back, we're going to slap a tariff on them. If it turns out that Donald Trump is good at wielding the carrots of tax reform, tax benefits, and sticks, not only are we going to lower the overall corporate tax rate to something around 15%, which in and of itself, from a macroeconomic standpoint, would be a huge win for the economy, but also he's not afraid to say, by the way, go to Mexico and, my friend Knuckles might show up and give you a hard time. That might end up being a effective, smart way to create jobs or to promote job growth in the United States.
Well, it's one way. And you mentioned those blue-collar workers who may look at this and say, hey, good. But then they also have some more news to look at, and I wonder how they might feel about former Goldman Sachs executive Steve Mnuchin and billionaire investor Wilbur Ross being appointed to cabinet posts in Treasury and Commerce. This would seem to be the sort of cabinet directly that Donald Trump ran against.
The 1% sitting there in the cap. What happened to blue-collar Trump? I got to tell you, the worst thing about being a Goldman Sachs guy isn't the harsh media criticism. It's knowing how many Hillary Clinton speeches he had to sit through in the past, that poor guy. It's interesting to me. The one thing I'll say about Wilbur Ross, who has a somewhat tough talk on trade, restricted trade approach, and Steve Mnuchin is, not a lot of people know a lot about them. They're not lightning rods. And not that Trump is listening to me, but my advice again and again is you have the Department of Lightning Rods covered. You've got all the lightning rods. You don't need Rudy Giuliani at state. You don't need a Treasury Secretary who's someone who's, a wild-eyed anti-free trader, or someone that I would like, a super laissez-faire, small government, no, tax code changes kind of guy. And depending on what we find out about these two through the vetting process, I think he's got a chance to kind of start with a clean slate. I will say this, though. Steve Mnuchin has 34 film credits as a producer. And if Donald Trump picking him for Treasury does nothing more than preventing the making of Suicide Squad 2, he will have done something great for the American people.
Well, it appears we've found some common ground here, Michael,
which
is good news. It also would serve, if nothing else, you mentioned the lightning rod and perhaps the lightning rod aspect of some of these appointments. Lightning provides energy. Does this energize the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party?
Well, I think they were going to be energized no matter what. But I just want one reason why Trump supporters and a lot of Americans roll their eyes when they hear all this talk about industrial policy and you're going to, give away money to create jobs, blah, blah, is that they've already been through this. Solyndra, $500 million to friends of Obama to create 0 jobs. Evergreen Solar, ABC Battery. I mean, the fact is that friends of Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton and the Democratic establishment here in D.C. and New York, they get taken care of. And I really think that the argument that watch out for these Trump guys, they're Wall Street guys. Well, they're the Wall Street guys who give money to Democrats. In fact, Mnuchin, I think, has given far more money, if I understand the reporting correctly, to Democrats than Republicans. I think what Trump supporters are saying is, look, somebody's going to be throwing money around somewhere. Instead of throwing money to other people, why don't you throw it to us? We'll take that deal. For 8 years, the friends of Obama got it. Now it's the time for the friends of Trump to get it.
You mentioned Secretary of State and lightning rod. So if you're dismissing on that measure the candidacy of Rudy Giuliani, it would seem to leave 2 remaining of this short list of which we've been speaking. Mitt Romney and General David Petraeus. Which way, if you were advising Donald Trump, which way would you tell him to turn?
Okay, did Bolton get knocked off the list? I just want to make sure I'm up on that.
He is, again, if it was a 3-person list, although Bolton's name, John Bolton, of course, had been attached initially. His name had seemed to fall off this short list of which we speak but never see. What do you make? What would you have Donald Trump do with Secretary of State?
I would say, Donald Trump, don't pick David Petraeus and relitigate the issue of email security. Hillary Clinton has already lost that debate. Don't bring it back up. Don't pick Rudy Giuliani, someone you've got to watch all the time to see what's going on. Not because Rudy's good or bad, but just because he tends to throw off more energy than he can consume. I really think that and this is something we're hearing around the halls at the Weekly Standard magazine, that the Bolton name is inching back up. It's kind of looking like a possible default. I'm not predicting. I'm just saying that people go, he's got the experience. I love John Bolton for his comment from the 90s about if you knock 10 stories out of the UN tomorrow, it would do no damage whatsoever. I think he's got the right attitude about the failures of the international community without American leadership.
You didn't mention Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney. I will say, I spent most of my career in talk radio, and so I know the Trump talk radio base pretty well. Nice folks. They really don't like Mitt Romney. I mean, really, really don't. And I've heard a lot of talk about, the Trump supporters, they'll take anything that Trump does. They just support Trump. There's not one policy, not one position. They just like Trump. They would be pushing it pretty. It would be like me telling my wife, not only is tonight poker night and I didn't tell you, but your mother-in-law is showing up too. It'd be really tough.
So is this just theater then?
At first, I really thought this was just Donald Trump messing with Mitt Romney. Just how far can we push the guy, But the re-meet, the comments afterwards, a lot of positive talk. I mean, it could be the case that Donald Trump really, this new Trump that we're seeing a lot of since the election, that suddenly he realizes that his name is going to be on the same list as Lincoln and Roosevelt and Reagan. Maybe he is thinking bigger. Maybe he is thinking, I'm not a fan of Mitt, but he's a smart guy. He could do the job, and I'm going to set all of the background aside and just make this pick purely on the merits. But once again, his base, man, they're really going to be unhappy.
Okay, well, something perhaps then, and I get you out of here on this one, that Abraham Lincoln didn't need to consider, how to divest oneself of a multi-billion-dollar personal empire. We heard yesterday from Donald Trump himself say that he'll tell us all about it in a couple weeks, but essentially he would be stepping away from his businesses. He has previously said he would give them to his adult children. He has previously said that he would do that in a blind trust, which is not a blind trust. In fact, ethicists have said that even a blind trust, considering the very public nature of the Trump business itself, would not do the trick here, that complete divestment is the only way to go. What do you make of where we are and where we need to be?
Josh, I think you just did a great job of showing how it's essentially impossible for Donald Trump to behave in a way that guarantees that there will never be the potential for a news story about impropriety or the possibility of impropriety. His company is just too big. It really is a unique selection for President of the United States. You could say, well, if he completely divests it, somebody, somewhere in his family, somebody's going to have an investment. They're going to make some money off of something. And so that's why I think that the standard for Trump is really simply satisfying the American people. If they feel comfortable with whatever distance is between himself and his company, they'll be fine. If he says, for example, I'm selling the entire thing to my kids are borrowing the money, they're going to buy me out, and then the New York Times, the Washington Post go after him for it, I think a lot of Americans are going to go, come on, he sold the company. Of course he sells it to his kids. He has no right to have his kids prosper for his hard work and business acumen. So I think if he creates the right zone, he'll be fine. But I do have a solution, Josh, if you want to hear it. This is very simple.
I do.
Mr. Trump, you can hand the company to me, Michael Graham, at the Weekly Standard, and I will guarantee that everything will be fine. Just send small unmarked bills.
All right, just let us know how that offer turns out.
I'm offering to serve my country by taking over his multi-billion-dollar empire.
I demand the exclusive Michael Graham. I want it promised here for posterity.
Anything for you, Josh.
Appreciate it. Okay, you and I rowing here into uncharted waters. Michael Graham at the Weekly Standard. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.